Yeah, good afternoon to one and all.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, myself, I'm Dr. G. Sudhakar. Yeah, now I'm going to deal with the environmental health and natural hazards. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, you are audible.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you. Yeah, today we are going to discuss about the environmental health and natural hazards. First, let me see the syllabus. What are the contents which we have? Let me show some syllabus content. Yeah. So this is your syllabus. So this is the black one, health concepts. So in this black one, so unit 1, health and environment. So unit 2, population growth. Unit 3, epidemiology. And unit 4, community health. Are all of you able to view this screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, right. So this is your syllabus, first black syllabus, black 1. So in this black one, we have 4 units. Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4. So first unit, health and environment. Second unit, population growth. Unit 3, epidemiology. Unit 4, community health. So coming to black 2, health hazards. In this again, we have 4 units. Radiation hazards, chemical hazards, air, chemical hazards, water, and last unit, unit 8, public health and environmental toxicology. So these are the topics which are included in the black 2. Then coming to black 3, hazards control, mitigation and policy. So in this black 3, again we have 7 units. Unit 9, air quality issues. Unit 10, water sanitation. Unit 11, public health issues. Unit 12, occupational health issues. Unit 13, industrial accidents. And Unit 14, toxic and chemical waste. And Unit 15, vector control. So these are topics which are included in the Black 3. Then coming to Black 4, natural hazards. In this again 4 units we have. The Unit 16, volcanics. Unit 17, earthquakes and tsunamis. Unit 18, hill slopes, landslides, and snow mountains. And Unit 19, floods, cyclones, and droughts. These are Black 4. And last Black 5th. So Black 5th again we have 3 units. So in this need and scope of environmental education, need and scope of environmental awareness, and environmental awareness programs. Okay. So this is your complete contents of your environmental health and natural hazards in your first semester. So in this paper, we have totally 5 blocks are there. Each block again, individual units are there. So this is environmental health and natural hazards. So it's a general subject, environmental health and natural hazards. As we know, the environmental health, how the environmental health, the health it has been, what are the interactions between the environment and the human health. So how the human health it has been interacting with the other branches, mostly the environment. So what is the interaction between these environment and health and natural hazards? As we know, the natural hazards, we can also say the natural phenomena. So the natural hazards can occur naturally. Yes. So just like the cyclones, tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes, isn't it? So these are all the natural hazards. So these hazards, we cannot stop them. Only we can predict and mitigate. So it occurs naturally. Okay. So let's see the first chapter, health concepts. So in this health concepts, so this is your book, Environmental Science, MS Environmental Science, Environmental Health and Natural Hazards or Natural Disasters. Hazards or disasters, both are same. Okay. So this is your complete syllabus. Yeah. So as we know, the environmental health. So generally, the environmental health is a branch of a public health that focuses on the relationship between the people and their environment. So generally, it can promote the human health and well-being, and mostly the environmental health is a key part of any comprehensive public health systems. So as we know, the environmental health generally it depends on interrelation between the interaction between the environment. So generally, the environmental health was defined in the year 1989. So documented by the World Health Organization. As we know, the WHO, the World Health Organization, as these aspects of human health and disease that are determined by factors in the environment. It is also referred to the theory and practice of accessing and controlling factors in the environment that can potentially affect the health. So generally, the environmental health as used by the WHO, so the World Health Organization regional office for the, it has been includes both the direct pathological effects of chemicals, radiation, and some biological agents, and the effects on health and well-being of the bird and physical physiological and social and cultural environment. So which includes the housing, urban and development, land use, and all these factors which are going to be directly or indirectly effects on the public health. Yes, generally, so according to WHO has also defined the environmental health, those services mostly which implement the environmental health policies mostly throughout the monitoring and control activities. So they also carry out of the environmental friendly and healthy technologies, yes, and behaviors. They also have a leading. So these health parameters which are going to be leading, mostly whatever the parameters, a leading role in developing and suggestions in new policies of areas where it is going to take place by WHO. So here generally the term environmental medicine may be seen as a medical, especially or branch of these, a broader field of environmental health. So as we know, the terminology is not fully established, and in many European countries, they are used to interchangeably. So generally, as we know, the environmental health, so what are the interactions? What are the interactions between the environment and health? How this environment, which is going to be whatever the unwanted things which are occurred in the environment, the things which are going to be effect on the human health. So as we know, if the environment is good in condition or well-being in condition, then only our health should be definitely depends on the environmental condition. So sometimes, as we are seeing very clearly, you might have observed sometimes you might have observed. So suddenly, if environment has changed, if weather has changed, the what we call the climate has changed. So definitely, your health condition is going to be changed. So it means whatever the changes are occurred in the environment, so that effect definitely which will impact on our health, isn't it? So it means the environmental interactions, whatever the human interventions which has taken place in the environment, that human interventions definitely is going to impact on the human health. So whatever the environmental imbalances, so naturally as we have the nature or environment, it has well-being condition or balancing condition, what the nature gives us. But this environment with the human intervention or human involvement, this environment is going to be changed. So this environment is going to be polluted, isn't it? So what we can call it as, pollution means any pollutants, any pollutant or what you can call it as unwanted substances which are going to be added to the environment. So what is environmental pollution or environmental imbalances means any unwanted substances which are going to be added to the environment. So the substance, there may be any biological substances or chemical substances, whatever it may be. So if it is unwanted substances, so which are going to be added to the environment. So when these are going to be added to the environment, definitely they are going to be a great remark. They are going to be change the environmental condition. So they are going to change the environmental balance. So the environment got change. So when the environment got change, we can call it as simply pollution. If it is if it is occurs in the water pollution, if it is occurs in the air pollution, if it is caused in the others, we can call it as a different way of pollutions, isn't it? So it means whatever the changes which takes place in the environment, whatever the substances which are going to be added to the environment, definitely the environment got change. So this change should be influence or impact on the human health. So it means environmental health. So health is a well-being in condition when we are physically or mentally fit or well-being in condition, that is health. Health means we are physically fit, we are mentally fit, and well-being in condition. When we say the well-being condition, that is as we are in healthy. So environmental health. So the health depends on whatever the things which I explained, which are related to the environment, which are interactions to the environment. So as we know, the human beings are always interact to the environment, isn't it? We need the environment. We can interact with each and every aspect by beginning in the morning onwards. We are interacting with the environment, so that we are the major responsible persons to change the environment, isn't it? Ourselves mostly. So as we know, right now, the nowadays, mostly the environment starts urbanization, industrialization. It's a part of development, isn't it? It's a part of development. We are constructing, isn't it? We are deforesting, isn't it? So industrialization, the several industries, so technology is developing. There are several industries are going to takes place in order to develop the nation, in order to develop the human beings, we are spoiling many things, isn't it? So for example, if you want to construct anything, so there are several substances which are going to be added to the environment, isn't it? So the huge institution, if you are going to construct, so how much soil pollution has takes place, how much water pollution has takes place, how much air pollution has been takes place, isn't it? So we are regularly interact with the soil, water, isn't it? Air, mostly. So it means there are several things we are going to spoiling. There are several things which are going to be used for the construction. Means each and everything. For example, if you want to construct a huge institution in a certain area, first you want to clear that area. Whatever the forestry is there, whatever the vegetation is there, isn't it? So all these which are going to be takes place, which are quite common, mostly which has been takes place, whatever the things which are going to be there. So all these factors we need to remove instead of going to be construct any industry or society or any institution, isn't it? It means, so before that, whatever the forestry, whatever the vegetation, so it means the biodiversity is going to be changed, isn't it? So the biodiversity has going to be changed place. So biodiversity has been widely destroying. Whatever the vegetation, whatever the forestry, whatever the things are there before going to construction, that things are quite is going to be clean. You need to scrap first that area. You need to site that. You need to clear that site, isn't it? So it means it is clearly shows that deforestation has been taken place, urbanization has industrialization takes place, and coming to urbanization, as we know, this is very common in these days. Urbanization. So the village people are migrated to the towns, isn't it? The village peoples are migrated to the towns for the better survival, isn't it? For their luxury life. So most of the people would like to survive in better way. So what the present scenario, mostly the people would like to migrate or transported to the urbans, from the towns to from the villages to the towns, isn't it? So this is urbanization. So as we know, the crowded cities like Hyderabad, isn't it? Delhi, Kolkata, West, all these areas which has been very highly crowded regions, because now everyone would like to go to cities. Means definitely that region or that area which has been crowded by the people, isn't it? So the density is very more, the population is very more within the limited area. within the small area, the huge population. So it means the several things which are going to be disposed, isn't it? Due to the urbanization, there's the towns, the cities, which are going to be produced the huge number of waste material from their households, from their cities, from their towns. So it means which are all these, mostly it leads to directly and indirectly on health. So health concepts definitely, which has been quite related to the what we do or how we are going to behave with the environment. So what is our attitude and how we are behaving with other things. So how we are going to help the nature or how we are going to be destroy the environment. But all these things on human health, mostly the human health which is going to become comparatively things which we do, which has been quite related to common. So it reflects what we do, what we interact with the environment, that things should be definitely which has been impact on our health. So this is environmental health. So when the environment is well-being in condition or well-being in balancing condition, isn't it? Well-being in balancing condition, then only the health, the public health should be definitely in well-being condition. So this is a relation between the environment and health. Environment and health. So whatever the human interventions or human interactions with the environment, definitely those things which are going to be impact on the human health. So generally, whatever the things which are going to be common and all these factors which are mostly influenced and whatever the things which are going to be maintain all these scenarios which are quite common in these areas where you are seeing which has been quite common. So generally, as we know, according to the term which has been quite common and mostly we depend on the environment for energy, isn't it? All the human beings are depending on the environment for the energy source or nutritional materials and the materials needed to sustain life. So if you want to sustain our life, you want to survive on our life, we need to depend on the environment for the sake of energy and materials. So such as like clean air, isn't it? For example, I can say a clean air, a safe drinking water, a nutritious food, a safe place to live, isn't it? So these are some of the important factors. So which are quite we need as we human beings need to survive our life. To sustain our life, we need a clean air. So the clean air comes from environment, isn't it? The clean air comes from environment, as well as a safe drinking water, isn't it? A safe drinking water. So we need the safe drinking water to better sustain our life. And nutritious food, so diet material, so dietary food materials we need, and safe place to live, isn't it? These are the most important factors which we need to better sustain our life, isn't it? So here, generally, whatever the mostly things which we need, that we comes from the environment. And we have the responsibility to give the nature as it is what we receive from our forefathers, isn't it? So it is our responsibility. So whatever the environment, the good environment which we receive from our ancestors, so we need to give as it is back to our children again, isn't it? So don't be spoil the environment. So if you spoil the environment, definitely it will impact on our health, because we interact with the environment. Every day we are going to interact with the environment. So So whatever the things, so environment is a broad scenario. So whatever the surroundings which are there, the air, water, soil, all these coupled together, we can call it as environment. So when our surroundings are good being in condition, definitely our environment will be, our health will be well-being in condition. So as we know, there are mostly we can say the 5 basic disciplines generally contribute to the field of environmental health. As I say, the 5 basic disciplines generally which are going to be contribute to the field of environmental health. There are 5 major disciplines which are generally contribute to the field of environmental health. So they are environmental epidemiology, toxicology, exposure science, and environmental engineering, and environmental law. So these 5 disciplines which are going to be impact are major factors which are going to contribute to the field of environmental health. So environmental epidemiology, toxicology, exposure science, the environmental engineering, and environmental law. So each of these 5 disciplines which are going to be contributes a different information to describe a problems and solution in environmental health. However, there is some overlap among them. So as we know, the environmental epidemiology studies the relationship between environmental exposures, including to chemicals, radiation, microbiological agents, etc., which are exposure, means which are going to be facing. Exposure nothing which are going to face the chemicals, radiation, microbiological agents, etc., all these, and human health. So observational studies which observe exposure that people have already experienced are common in environmental epidemiology, because the humans cannot ethically be exposed to agents that are known or suspected to cause disease, while the inability to use experimental study designs is a limitation of environmental epidemiology. So these disciplines, so it means the environmental epidemiology, so directly observes the effects on human health. So what is environmental epidemiology? It is going to observe. This discipline is directly observes the effects on human health rather than estimating effects from animal studies. So the environmental epidemiology is study of the effect on human health of physical, biological, and chemical factors to the external environment. So broadly conceived. This discipline, which one? As I said, there are 5 disciplines. Number 1, environmental epidemiology. Number 2, toxicology. Number 2, exposure science. Number 4, environmental engineering. Number 5, environmental law. Yes. So first one, environmental epidemiology, is a study of effect on human health. It is going to observe, it is going to study of the effect on human health of physical, biological, and chemical factors in the external environment. So also examine a specific populations or communities exposed to a different ambient environment, isn't it? A different ambient environments. Epidemiology in our environment aims to clarify the relationship that exists between physical, biological, and chemical factors and human health. So simply we can say the environmental epidemiology is going to study about the effects on human health, which are physical, chemical, and biological, isn't it? So these are the effects which are going to be observed, on the the things so whatever the things which are going to be seen is very clearly, and whatever the effects very clearly, and whatever the things which are going to be mostly able to view in the parameters which you need to able to study, and whatever the things which are going to be impact on the human health need to be studied in the environmental epidemiology, as we know. So coming to toxicology, yes? Coming to toxicology, am I audible to you?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. Some are raising. Okay, right. Yeah, right. So number two, coming to toxicology. So there are 5 disciplines. Number 1 is environmental epidemiology. Number 2 is toxicology. So toxicology is a study how the environmental exposures lead to specific health outcomes, and generally, which has been quite common in animals, as a means to be understand a possible health outcomes in humans toxicology as the advantage of being able to conduct randomized controlled trials and other experimental studies. So the toxicology is going to study how the environmental exposures so lead to specific health generally. So however, there are many differences in animal and human biology. Animal and just somebody has sent a message. Tell the unit of page number, please. Yeah, someone is asking in the chat box. So can you tell the unit number or page number, sir? So this is first black, unit 1, health concepts. You can see the first health concepts. Okay. Black 1, unit 1, environment and health. Okay. I think you are joined late. You can see the first unit, first black in the first unit. Okay. Yeah. Coming to second factor, toxicology. Toxicology. So toxicology, however, there are many differences in animal and human biology, and there can be a lot of uncertainty when interpreting the results of animal studies, for their implications for human health. This is a toxicology, a relation of animals and human health. Then coming to exposure science, third factor. Okay, exposure science. First one, environmental epidemiology. Second one, toxicology. Third one, exposure science. So this exposure science studies human exposure to environmental contaminants. So to environmental contaminants by both identifying and quantifying exposures. Yes. So exposure science can be used to support the environmental epidemiology by better describing environmental exposures that may lead to a particular health outcome, identify a common exposures whose health outcomes may be better understood. So through a toxicology study, or can be used in a risk assessment to determine whether current levels of exposure might exceed recommended levels. So third factor is exposure science. As we know, exposure means, so when we face the environment, we are going to facing the environment. So in what way we are facing the environment? How we are going to expose to the environment? Isn't it? From beginning in the morning onwards up to in the evening or go to mid up to bedtime, night time. So we have to be interactive with the many things. We have to be interactive. We are going to generally we used to environment. We are going to exposure. Means we are going to facing a lot of things, isn't it? We are wandering here and there. There are several places we are going to be covered, isn't it? We used to go outside. We used to go different places, agriculture, farming, and different sectors, isn't it? Different persons are different ways they are going to be there. So whatever the regular life which is going to be bounded, all these places we generally interact with the other things, isn't it? So we are going to expose, isn't it? So the fellow is generally doing farming. So that fellow is regularly exposed to the sunlight, exposed to the soil, exposed to the air, exposed to the water, isn't it? So because his field is agriculture, so every day is going to expose to the air, to the water, to the light, to the sunlight, isn't it? So you need to expose in this field mostly, isn't it? So whatever the field of the person, mostly you need to express exposure to that field respectively, isn't it? So in what way? So there are several sectors are there. There are several things are there need to go to observe and which are going to be facing a lot. So means the environmental contaminants, the human exposure to contaminants by the identifying and quantifying exposures. So contaminants means which are polluted, which are excess in concentration. Air contamination, generally we can say air contamination అయిందని చెప్తుంటాం. అంటే ఏంది? ఎయిర్ కలుషితం అయిందని చెప్తుంటాం. Water contamination, water కలుషితం అని contaminants means either excess or deficiency concentrations or lowered concentrations or higher concentrations which are going to be added, which are those substances which are going to be added to the air. Excess concentrations are added to the air or lower concentrations are there in the air. So these are either excess or either lower concentrations. So we can say that is imbalance or contaminations. Contamination nothing but the unwanted substance are going to be added. Contamination అంటే సింపుల్ మనం we can say any unwanted అంటే అవసరం లేనటువంటి పదార్థం, isn't it? So unwanted substance, అవసరం లేనటువంటి పదార్థం అనేది యాడ్ కావడము, కలిసిపోవడం, కలవడం. సో దానివల్ల ఏమవుతుంది? Impure, the pure material or pure substance are going to be impure, isn't it? The pure substance are going to be impure. It means that is impure nothing but pollution. So in scientific term we can call it as contaminations. Scientific గా దాన్ని మనం కలుషితమైంది, పొల్యూట్ అయింది దాన్ని ఏమంటాం అంటే కంటామినేషన్ అంటాం. So the air contaminations, water contaminations, soil contaminations, isn't it? So the environmental contaminations means so all several factors or unwanted substances which are going to be added to the environment. So that is environmental contaminations. So generally, so by identifying and quantifying exposures, by both identifying some contaminations we can identify by simply, but some substance we are not going to be able to identify, isn't it? So generally we can, there are, as we know, we are drinking the water, isn't it? We use water to drink. So there are several things are there in the water, but some substances we are unable to notice, isn't it? In the water, as we know, do you know in the water there are several things are there. There are several substances are present in the water, like sodium, calcium, potassium, isn't it? The TDS, isn't it? There are several chemicals, there are several minerals which are present in the water. But are all these substances are we able to notice? No, we can't. We can't able to identify. So that is why some contaminants able to identifying, some are not able to the quantifying exposures. Where it is excess concentration, more and more, then only we can, some substances excess and excess, then only we can able to identify. So some are not able to identify. Only with help of several analysis, only with help of certain parameters, then only we can able to understand, then only we can able to notice certain substances, isn't it? So that is what we are saying in the mostly in the field of exposure science. Okay, so here generally that mostly we can see the exposure science as the advantage of being able to very accurately the quantify exposure to specific chemicals, but it does not generate any information about health outcomes like environmental, epidemiology, or toxicology. Okay. So it is going to be mostly the effects of which is going to be takes place. Okay. Then coming to fourth factor, environmental engineering. Environmental engineering. So the environmental engineering applies a scientific and engineering principles for protection of human populations from the effects of adverse environmental factors. So what is the environmental engineering factor? How it is going to be a major discipline in the environmental health? So the environmental engineering applies a scientific and engineering principles. Scientific and engineering principles for protection of human populations. Protection of human populations from the effects of adverse environmental factors. So this environmental engineering is going to protect the human populations from the effects of adverse environmental factors. From the adverse environmental factors. So protection of environments from a potential deleterious effects of natural and human activities and general improvement of environmental quality. So environmental engineering is one of the important discipline which are going to be protected. It is a protection of human populations from the adverse effects, from the effects of adverse environmental factors. So adverse means severe. There are severe effects from the severe environmental factors. So it is going to protect the environmental engineering. It is going to protection from the people population from the adverse environmental factors. So mostly the general improvement of environmental quality. So it is going to improve the environmental quality, isn't it? So as we know, the quality control measures. So quality is very, very important, not quantity, isn't it? Which one is important, quality or quantity?
Quality.
Yeah, quality is important. So quality measures, it is going to play an important role in the better sustainable life. So quality environment, nothing but well-being in condition. It is a well-being in condition. When we say the well-being in condition in all the aspects, the environment should be in the good in position. Means healthy in condition. So healthy is nothing but happy. Means when we are having such a wonderful environmental scenario or wonderful environment positions are there in your surroundings, isn't it? So generally in this occasion, I would like to say a small incidents whenever you able to experience it. For example, when you used to go to a parks, isn't it? When you go to parks, how do you feel in the park? you should feel in the park very happily, very enjoying, isn't it? Because in the park, they will maintain all the factors or well-being in condition. Such a wonderful place where we can mostly enjoy, isn't it? Because the park, it has been maintaining, there are different biodiversities there, isn't it? Means different plants, different type of trees and plants, and as well as a good air, isn't it? The pleasant air, a pleasant atmosphere, it can show us very clearly in that area, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why? Because it is a place where we can maintain all the factors in the balancing condition. Actually, we don't know how it is, how we can enjoy there. There are several factors are there, but they are in the balancing condition. So what level we need to there, at what condition the people's is exactly which we need, accordingly they should be maintained. Because it is a pleasant area where we can mostly enjoy it, like we are liking the place. So because it's pleasant area, there is no sound pollution, there is no air pollution, there is no water pollution, isn't it? So mostly the pollution is not takes place. It's not going to take place in that areas because it's a full of filled with the plants and trees, green grass, vegetation, isn't it? So all these factors which are going to be maintained properly. So mostly we can, how much time we are spending there, we can't countless, isn't it? Simply the time is moves. Without knowing us, the time is spent, very lot of time we are spent very easily, without any difficulties. We are enjoying. Because of the environmental condition. So it plays an important role in the human life. It means that workplace, is it play an impact on our health? Yes, definitely. It plays an important role. It impacts is there, so that if we can able to say, we can mostly like there. We can mostly enjoy it there. But whether the place, if you are go to visit, if you are go and visit the whatever they call it as highly crowded regions, isn't it? Highly crowded regions in the traffic areas, what you can call it as the supermarkets, isn't it? The shopping malls. Are you able to same feeling in the park as it is in the such crowded regions?
No, sir.
No. Why? Because there is a scarcity in the good air. So there is a huge, highly populated, so that it is a polluted. So lacking, all the lacking, oxygen concentration is lacking, isn't it? The air is not safe, drink, no safe drinking water. All these impure because of huge crowd, because of huge population is there. So that is why the quite difference between these two areas I can show in this regarding. How the environment plays a major role, or how the environment is going to impact on our health. Okay. Then last one, the environmental law, fifth factor, and this is environmental law. So as we know, the environmental law includes the network of treaties, statutes, regulations, a common and customer laws addressing the effects of human activity on the natural environment. So the environmental law includes, as we know, some guidelines. The law, as per the law, the environmental protection, isn't it? So without harming the environment. So conservation. So conservation of environment. protection of environment is also one of the important aspect, one of the important principle. So, which is going to be a network. If you are protect, definitely it will be protect us, isn't it? If you are protect the environment, definitely it will be protect us. So, of treaties, most of the statutes, the regulations, the common and customary laws and addressing the effects of human activities on the natural environment. So as we are seeing, the information from epidemiology, from toxicology, from exposure science can be combined to conduct a risk of assessment of a specific chemicals, mixtures of chemicals or other risk factors to determine whether an exposure poses a significant risk to human health, isn't it? This can in turn be used to develop and implement environmental health policy. So for example, regulates chemical emissions or imposes standards for proper sanitation. Action of engineering and law can be combined to provide a risk management to minimize, a monitor, and otherwise manage the impact of exposure to protect human health, to achieve the objectives of environmental health policies. Objectives of environmental health policies. So the environmental law can measure some guidelines as well as whatever the information, whatever the examines of the epidemiology, toxicology, and exposure science, as well as the environmental engineering, all together which is going to be combined in the environmental law. So all the actions, all the impacts, all the factors which are going to be combined, coupled in the environmental law. So it means this can be turned to be cause develop and implement the environmental health and health policies. So the environmental law, it can implement the health policies. It can implement the health policies, policy makers, policy matters. So which regarding to the health. So generally, the action of engineering and law can be combined. Mostly we can say, as we say, the management to monitor and otherwise it is going to be takes place. So the regulations. So mostly whatever the things which are going to be adopted in the environment. So the monitors combine to provide a risk management to minimize a monitor and otherwise manage the impact of exposure to protect human health. So as we know, generally, so whatever the assessment of specific, the exposure science, which is going to be takes place. And also we can say, the science can be combined to conduct a risk management for specific chemicals and mixtures of chemicals or other risk factors to determine whether an exposure poses significant risk to human health. So generally, whatever the chemicals which are exhausted from the industries, this is one of the worst scenario in India. So whatever the waste, whatever the exhausted materials, after industrial usage, there are several waste should be released to the outside the environment from the industries very simply. If you can observe in your surroundings, there are several factories or industries which are going to be release their waste into the outside, or into the environment very simply, isn't it? Each and every industry, each and every factory, after their usage, whatever the waste material in the sense of chemicals, which are directly released to the environment without proper treatment of those waste. Just they are simply disposed into the outside the environment, so that the environmental balance got changed. The environmental position got changed, isn't it? So this is, nobody can monitor. The laws are there, the environmental laws is there, environmental law is there, but it's only the defect of the monitoring officers. They are not performing their duties properly. So these wastes are simply released into the environment. So actually, whatever the waste in the industries or factories, that waste should be treated or neutralizing plant, and thereafter only it has to be released without harming material to the environment. But how many factories or industries are like this? No single industry or no single factory which are not doing the same. Just simply the harmful chemicals which are directly released to the environment. So that environment got imbalance. The environment got imbalance. So in this way, all these things which are going to be takes place. So these wastes which are going to be mixed with the water got pollution. If these interaction with the air pollution takes place, which are going to interact with the soil got changed, soil pollution takes place. And we see, due to these harmful wastes, soil pollution occurred, water pollution takes place, and as well as air pollution takes place, isn't it? So that is why the environmental law can be examine the whatever the chemicals, whatever the excess harmful things which are going to, it is going to monitoring. The law is going to monitoring for the respective substances which are going to be released into the environment, and in what way which are going to be effect on the human health. So that is why it's going to protect the human health, and health policies to protect the human health to achieve the objectives of environmental health policy. So there is environmental law which is going to be helped to achieve the objectives of environmental health policies. So these are the 5 disciplines which are there in the environmental health. One is environmental epidemiology, second one is toxicology, third one is exposure science, fourth one is environmental engineering, and fifth one is environmental law. So these are the 5 disciplines which are going to be monitoring or interacting with the environmental health. So this is environmental health first unit. In the first block, first unit. Okay. Then if you have any doubt, you can ask. If somebody has raised the chat box, message placed. Let me check. Okay, no message. Just use. Please, thank you, sir. If you have any doubt, you can ask. After completion of each block, I will post the material. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
After completion of each and every block, whatever the units are there, that material I will post in the group. You can prepare for that material is useful for your examinations.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all.
ব্যাস